Hello everybody and welcome to the 7th video in our series of videos on ancient Rome. Today we are looking at the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. Remember, a republic is a form of government where people were elected by the patricians to the Senate. They would then elect two consuls who would rule for a year. After their time was up, they would step down. Whereas with an empire, we're going to be looking at someone who will rule until their death. As always, we begin with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this presentation, you guys should know who was in the Second Triumvirate. You guys should know 2 reasons why the Roman Republic failed. And finally, you guys should know how Augustus became the first emperor of Rome. As we saw in our last video, Julius Caesar was killed on the Ides of March, and the big question was what happens next. So after the death of Caesar, the Senate hoped that they would be the people who would regain the power they had lost while Caesar served as dictator. But it didn't quite work out like that. It created what we call a power vacuum. And within that power vacuum, there were certain candidates that had an opportunity to take power. The first contender was the Senate. Unfortunately for the Senate, they thought that just getting rid of Julius Caesar would be enough to get them back their power. But the Senate were so divided, and they had tried to protect their own privileges and powers for so long that they'd rejected Caesar's reforms that they had become very unpopular within Rome. Other people who potentially could have taken power and who were agitating at the time were the landless Roman peasants. These were Romans who had served in the army. They had been promised land and they were never given it, and they were quite angry about this. Another group of people who potentially could have taken power were the Italian allies. So remember, Rome conquered Italy before it went off in the Punic Wars, and these allies had helped build and win the Roman Empire, but they were not given any citizenship rights. So no matter how rich they got, they were not allowed to vote for the leaders in Rome, and this led again to more anger on their part. With the death of Caesar, a new contender to fill the power vacuum arrives, and this was Octavian. So before Caesar died, he had stipulated in his will that his 19-year-old adopted nephew Octavian would become his political heir. So that means that he saw Octavian as the person who should succeed him. This didn't land too well with a man called Mark Antony. Mark Antony was Julius Caesar's most trusted and decorated general. He had helped Caesar win the civil war against Pompey, and he was upset that Octavian was chosen as his heir instead of him. However, Mark Antony put his misgivings aside and joined forces with Octavian and a man called Lepidus, and they seized power in 43 BCE, so the year after Julius Caesar died, and they formed something called the Second Triumvirate, where they decided they were the people who were going to rule Rome. They initially divided the empire into three. After that, Lepidus was eventually forced out, and Octavian and Mark Antony divided the empire between themselves. Octavian ruled everything that is red on this map, while Mark Antony ruled the east. They ruled like this for 12 years, but the whole time they were trying to turn the Senate and the people of Rome against their fellow ruler. So Octavian continually said that Mark Antony was becoming more and more Eastern. He was now living with Cleopatra, and that he was not Roman anymore, and we needed to stop him. So finally, in 31 BCE, a civil war broke out between Octavian and Mark Antony. This culminated in the massive Battle of Actium. This was a naval battle where Octavian defeated Mark Antony. What happened then was that Mark Antony and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria in Egypt. Again, their forces were defeated. Mark Antony and Cleopatra committed suicide, and this left Octavian as the sole ruler. In 27 BCE, so 4 years later, Octavian was given the name of Augustus, and that's what we know him as to this day, Emperor Augustus. And he was named the very first Roman emperor, and this brought an end to the Roman Republic. Augustus, he ushered in this thing called the Pax Romana, which is a long period of peace and stability. Within Rome, there was no conflict within Rome for 200 years. He extended the Roman Empire. He brought in reforms just like Julius Caesar had before, just like the Senate had refused to do. And he made the lives of people better. Remember, we've looked at the grain dole. He was responsible for bringing in the grain dole. So why did the Roman Republic fail? There are three main things that we can look at, and most of them have to do, and they all have to do with the Senate. Um, the Senate's reputation was damaged by how it handled the Civil War and the rise of Julius Caesar, and how they instigated the murder of Julius Caesar on the Ides of March. So the Senate's reputation was damaged by that. They also lost popularity because it just didn't address the issues that were affecting the people in the empire. There was large unemployment. There was people who were getting unpaid for their service in the army, and the Senate was more interested in taking care of their own privileges and responsibilities than taking care of the Roman people. The final reason as to why the Republic failed was that this form of government, it was supposed to be representative. If you vote somebody in, they're supposed to represent you, but only a small amount of people were allowed to vote, and they voted from a small group of people also. And Rome at this point is becoming a massive empire, so it didn't represent the people of the empire as a republic usually should. So people were happy to see it fall. Now, although Augustus proved to be a fantastic ruler and he brought in peace, there were a couple of dodgy emperors who need mention after the death of Augustus. One of them was called Caligula. He reigned for 4 years, from 37 CE to 41 CE. Just to give you a taste of Caligula's mental state, he declared war on Poseidon, the god of the ocean, and tried to shoot arrows into the sea to try to defeat Poseidon. Um, then we have Nero. Some of you may have heard of Nero. Again, somebody who was not a very good ruler. He ruled from 54 to 68 CE. He was brutal and cruel. He would kill people for his own kind of amusements. He had a habit of using early Christians as candles and burning them, which was a pretty horrific thing. If emperors like this had continued, maybe it would have been a problem for Rome. But then we have what are known as the five good emperors, and they come in around 100 CE. They are Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. And it was under these five emperors that Rome reaches its absolute height. Um, Territorially speaking, this is the biggest that the Roman empire gets. As you can see, it takes all of North Africa. It's up into Britain, takes most of Europe, Turkey, parts of Arabia, into Syria, modern day Iraq. And this happened under Trajan in 117 AD. After Trajan, Hadrian decided that the empire was too big and tried to put defensive walls up, where Hadrian's wall comes from in ancient England. So he tried to stop expanding the empire, but was still a very good ruler. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. So by now you guys should know who was in the Second Triumvirate. You guys should know two reasons why the Roman Republic failed due to the unpopularity of the Senate. And you guys should know how Augustus became the first emperor, what steps were taken, mainly how he defeated Mark Antony to become the first emperor of Rome. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys got something good from this video.